of get into it, and when people come along in, we'll welcome them in and they can catch on as we go. So without further ado, let me get into it. Annika, you kick us off.
All right. Can do. So hello, my name's Annika. I'm originally from Canada. I now live in Bristol, and I'm one of the global opportunities consultants based here in the UK, supporting educators going to Oz. I am trained as a teaching assistant. I trained back in Canada. I work particularly with or worked with SEN students, a lot of autism support that I provided. I worked as a TA for a year within Melbourne in Australia, and I worked with ANZ UK while I was there. I also worked across Canada, and then I moved over to Bristol and worked with ANZ UK here as well, where I worked in an autism school for a year and a half. So quite a bit of experience kind of just, across multiple locations, working as an SEN TA, so I can provide some insight around that.
Lovely. And I am Kiara. I am currently based here in the UK in London, but I'm originally from Melbourne, the best city in Australia, if you ask me. And I am a ex-teacher, I guess you could say. And I also worked as a TA as well when I was back home. So I worked in the special needs settings for about 6 years back home in Australia across both TA work and teaching work. So have quite a bit of experience there and always happy to share some advice. I just think it's a setting that everyone should experience or at least do some work in, especially if you're staying in education, because you're always going to have students that requires additional needs throughout your career. So why not also do some work in it? But yeah, as said, from Melbourne, moved here to London about a year ago, and I'm loving it, but never got to teach here. So can't provide too much experience on the UK, but can definitely talk your ear off about Australia, that's for sure. But we'll get into it. So what we'll be covering today is we'll just talk a bit about who we are, why we do it, and why we move overseas, a big question, and all about the types of schools that we support in over in Australia within special needs, what it's like to work in those settings as both a teacher and a TA, and how you may be going around getting registered once you are there, depending on where you go and what you end up doing, because it might be different whether you're a teacher or a TA. And then obviously we'll connect some questions at the end, or if you do have any throughout the video, just feel free to shoot them into the chat there. We can see it and we'll try and answer it as we go as well. But yeah, that's what we're covering today. So hopefully it's useful and gets you excited for your move over or potential move over.
So ANZ UK has been operating globally for 20 years. I think as of today, even, it's been 20 years. So we started it between mostly Melbourne and London, and we've now expanded. We work across Australia, the UK, New Zealand as well. We have offices in America. We support educators making the journey from Canada. We have an office based in Europe to support European educators making the journey abroad. So we've got loads of different locations now. So we've got over 300 staff globally and 21 offices across multiple locations.
Guess you could say you're pretty well covered anyway. Yeah, it's great. And so why teach abroad as well? So both Annika and I have a lot to say about this. We've both done the journey of moving abroad. Annika probably has more to say on the career development of going abroad too, because she actually worked in both geographies or three, Canada, UK and Australia. But why teach abroad, personally, it brings so much into your life, whether that's showing yourself things that you never thought you'd be able to do. And it sets you up for the rest of your life to just take on challenges head first and not, scapegoat away thinking you're not able to do it. It really does promote that confidence within yourself. It also shows you cultures, ways of life, things that you can bring back into your life when you get returned back home, and experiencing just life in the country. Obviously, Australia is not crazy culturally different to, you could say, here, but obviously there's things like the language or the accents. Mine's not too bad, as people like to tell me. And the ways of life, whether it's going away camping, road trips, that life balance, Australians value a lot. And taking that into your life in the future as well. That's what it's all about. Obviously, career development. You know, look at Annika. She's been everywhere, done everywhere. Now she's here with us in the office. So if that doesn't show you what moving abroad and widening horizons does, don't know what else I can say, you know. And the experience life generally, whether that's the jobs you have, the friends you make, the lessons you learn, good or bad, it's all experience. It's all something that you will take with you for the rest of your life. It's one of those things I say to people that if you ever just thought, oh, I'm going to go away, I just think I like it, just do it. The worst that could happen is you don't like it and then go home, but at least you know. But we've together sent hundreds of people and barely anyone, I don't think anyone has ever said, I'm coming home, I don't like it. So there you go. Have a bit of confidence in that. What have we got?
Lovely. So there's a couple different settings within SEN schools in Australia. So you're going to get your SDS or special development schools, and then your special schools / kind of autistic schools. So autism schools obviously focus on those kinds of needs. So some differences you might see is that students may require IQ testing to attend certain settings, you know, so they might have to have certain tests done to determine whether they're going to be an SDS or a special school. STS schools have higher numbers of students with like special needs, including like kind of physical needs like toileting, feeding, even peg feeding. A lot more of the students might be nonverbal. The whole school learning might be less streamlined and more specific to the classrooms within SDS. So each classroom might have their own way that they run with how they like support each child, and the learning process might be more niche to that class and those needs that you see there. Higher levels of independence within SEN as well. So you do see students working kind of independently as well. They might have more kind of like mild learning disabilities and things in those SEN special schools. So you get a mixed range of abilities and everything there.
Yeah. Honestly, with the difference between SDS and SEN or special schools, autistic schools particularly tend to be the special schools, to be honest. So you need to have an autistic assessment done in order to attend. You find those schools have a lot more structure within their days. So whether that be, and that would also be aligned with having autism or ASD, as routine is a very important aspect of their learning and development. And so, yeah, you do find a lot of the time it's structured a lot better, and the whole school is structured the same way. So you can go into nearly every classroom and see the same schedule. So we, you know, have the color charts, the photos, you know, literacy, numeracy, break. Some students obviously within those settings require more breaks or extra support, one-on-one TA. Some groups may have one SMA, which you might call them an SEA, they call it a teaching assistant, TA in Australia. They may have one TA in the room, or they may have more than that, and that's dependent on the funding of the students in their classroom. So if there's a student that requires more support, whether that be through their learning or behaviours, things like that, you can see that you have more than one, but every classroom in Australia is required to have one TA. And the other big difference, I would say, for you guys on call if you're working within the UK or Ireland, is that in Australia, with special needs settings, we actually don't have units or classroom like people, or a class like you call them in the UK and Ireland. They're actually a separate school altogether. Some students may go to a mainstream setting, which may be organised through the teacher to schools. It might depend, and it's dependent on their social skills and learning ability as well. But it's actually a completely different school altogether than the mainstream school, which might be different to what you guys have experienced here at this side of the world. I can see the benefit of both. I have only worked within the setting where it was a special needs purely setting, and I see the benefit of that as well. So another reason why to come over and try something different, you will get a lot out of those two different types of, you know, settings you get from two sides of the world there. But we can answer anything about that if you have questions later on as well. But yeah, that's a bit about that one. What are we up to here? And so inside classroom, what you're going to be looking at. So what I was talking about before, when you go into a classroom, you know, you're generally going to see most classrooms have station work in Australia, which I know a lot of people, a lot of schools do here as well. So normally, same as mainstream settings, you start your mornings normally with literacy, numeracy, your core subjects, and then you move more into extracurricular activities later in the day, like swimming or PE or art, music, life skills, things like that. Within the stations as well, you have, depending on the class, depending on the kids, depending on the school, whatever it may be, you might also have sensory activities within those stations, or it might be one-on-one. I had a class where I had a group of students in my class that could do the work together, so I grouped them in a station to do with me, but then I had one student that needed to be with me one-on-one. So you'd structure your days to fit that and fit your students. That's obviously dependent. If you're doing contract work, you'd be in charge of that. If you're doing casual teaching, that will already be arranged for you when you arrive. So you don't have to stress about, oh my God, do I need to know if this kid needs one-on-one work or not? You do not have to worry about that if you are not their teacher all the time. Some schools are fantastic. The extracurricular activities, a school I worked at had a swimming pool, some horse riding, you can go to school camps, do all that stuff. It's really fun and some really awesome activities that the kids get to do and that you kind of get to do with them, which is great. Zoning and regulation is also a massive part of special needs settings within Australia. That is to do with the kids' emotional regulations. So teaching them how to express that, share it, and also act on it, which is something that if you yourself already work in special needs will understand the importance of that. And it is pretty much a fundamental part of nearly every school within Australia when it comes to special needs. So strategies behind all of this, it comes from multidisciplinary coordination. So you'll be working alongside the student psychologists, their OTs, so the occupational therapists, caseworkers, depending on the students, physiotherapists, depending on the setting, the schools you're working with, if you have students with cerebral palsy or other physical disabilities, things like that. And you will work with them to make sure that their day-to-day school life is aligned with what their physical and intellectual and mental needs are as well. We big motivators, had a lot of students from the class motivators. Everyone's different. One of my students, his was foam, shading foam, whatever floats your boat in that sense. Lots of sensory activities, lots of breaks, and PECS cards. If it was done through a physical card, I don't know if you call them PECS here, but that's just the physical picture version of expression there. And then it might be an actual communication device, which is normally set up by the occupational therapist. So you also would not have to worry about setting up their communication devices. And then obviously individual timetables, if that is what the student requires. So there's a lot that goes into it, but like I said, depending on what you're doing and what your role is, you're either going to be in the classroom structure that's already been set up for you, or if you're taking on a contract, you get really thrown into the educational strategies there as well. But either way, we at UK have a lot of resources, ex-teachers, and advice that we can support you with before you even step foot in the classroom to make sure you're not feeling overwhelmed or anything like that as well, okay?
Lovely. So these are some of the expectations of working as a teaching assistant within any kind of SEN settings. You don't have to work or have to have had experience within SEN here in the UK or Ireland before you work in SEN schools in Australia. As long as you're willing to learn, they're happy to have you. They're very inclusive that way, which is lovely. You just need to make sure you have had worked with children, and so we can do some reference checks to be able to work in the schools there. But absolutely fine otherwise. You will need to be open to supporting various needs. TAs provide a lot of support within the classroom as well. So again, you have to be comfortable with toileting, feeding, dressing kids. So you're going to be taking them to and from the toilet. Sometimes you're changing children depending on the age. With feeding is a lot of times kind of supporting children with like eating their lunch and snacks and things. You don't necessarily need to do a lot of like pay feeding unless you're trained on that. You can take a qualification on it, but unless you have that, you wouldn't really be doing any of that. And then dressing, just helping kids kind of get in and out of their PE kit, things like that, making sure they got their coats on and whatnot. So just helping them build independence around that too, providing support where they need it. You'll need to be actively involved in the class as well and be ready to jump in to support students at a moment's notice. When you are working as a TA, you're going to be sat there during the day with the children in the lesson, being involved in the activities. You don't want to be kind of sat at the back of the classroom just waiting for like to be needed or something to happen. You want to be involved. It really does kind of make a difference in the children's learning too if they've got that like a person to interact with them while they're doing these activities and things. So when you're working with a teacher and other TAs in the classroom, if you're working with multiple, they will, and if you're on supply work, the other members of the class will be able to give you an idea of kind of what's happening each session with each subject or whatever you're working on, and they'll be able to guide you in terms of what you'll need to be doing, with individual students and with the activity and everything. So you'll receive a lot of guidance on that. So you'll just want to make sure that you're following those instructions and just getting really stuck in with the students and taking the time to get to know them as well, because it makes a huge impact. You'll want to make sure that you definitely bring your patients. You'll be working with so many different needs, and you want to take the time to understand each student, because they're all going to have maybe small triggers or just things that help them feel their best or regulate better. So it's really good to take as much time as possible to learn their needs and how the best you can support them. Sometimes things happen and there can be some miscommunication along the way, but don't feel bad, because everybody learns, and there's always a new day to start again. But the more time you put into just continuing to get to know the students and building relationships, the more impactful it is. You'll need to familiarize yourself too with things like PEX cards and communication cards as well. So it's always good to familiarize yourself with that. And when you're going to a new classroom, just make sure that you're communicating with the whole team about the students and the day and what their structure looks like and what kind of regulation techniques they use. So just so you're clear across all techniques like that, and then you feel most comfortable, supporting the classroom as best you can.
Yeah. You'll also, a lot of classrooms you go into as well will provide a profile on the students, so that if you're new to the classroom, obviously you won't need to read this every day, but when you go into the classroom, they will provide a profile so you can go through each student, what their personalities are, what their triggers are, what makes them happy, what doesn't make them happy, feeding schedules, anything that's going to make their life and day better, and also yours. So don't stress with that as well. You will be, or if they don't have that, the regular TA or teacher in the room will sit down with you before the day starts and run you through the general growth of the day and what the students' behaviours are and all learning needs that are as well. So you'll get a lot of support, and you'll probably get a call before you even go from us and let you know a bit about it, because our consultants are very well covered in the schools that they work for and work with, and we'll be able to tell you pretty much everything about the kids before you get there as well. So you'll be well covered. Don't have to stress. What are we going to now? One of my favourites. So this is one of the schools that we work with in Melbourne. So this Monash Special Development School, SDS, is a huge school in Melbourne. And we just thought we'd share a little bit so you can see a little bit what the schools are like, what they do. I'm not going to show you the whole video, so don't stress, but just so you can get a bit of an idea of what you might be doing when you're over there.
Hi, my name is Tui Fantanga, school captain.
At Monash, we are happy learning new things with our friends.
So in the classroom, we'd often have rotations going, which is our rotations where the students will be able to do their work. So through a structured teaching program, they'll work their way around the classroom, often using visuals, things like that. So they'll work through their day using those visuals. Every class will have a bit of outside time, a bit of outside play, obviously meal times throughout the day. And then there's also on certain days, there's the different activities, the co-curricular stuff. So like music, arts, PE and swimming. Which is really cool, really fun for the kids as well. It helps to break up the day and break up the week a bit.
Monash, gee, the kids. I love the kids. I mean, here you just get such a diverse group of students, and they've all got the best personalities.
The culture here is special because the leadership really know what they're doing. They're hands-on in the classroom, hands-on with the families, and they are happy to teach you anything. There isn't a silly question to ask.
What are your favorite English and math?
So I'm not going to watch too much of it, because you can feel free to watch this whenever you want as well. We have a whole heap of videos on our YouTube channel that are fantastic. We have a lot of great relationships with the schools that we work with, aka SCS. But yeah, that's a bit of an insight to it. Lucky you understood old mate's Australian accent there. It was pretty thick. But yeah, that's a great school and a great you know, I guess, starting point if you want to get a bit more insight to what the days look like. You saw a lot of the visuals there, which is a major part of the schools there.
You'll see too that a lot of the classes aren't going to have any more than like a few students. So I would say probably anywhere between kind of maybe 8 and 10, would you say, Kiara? Like it's pretty the standard size. So you're not going to have like a huge classroom. Yeah.
Yeah. The max will only ever really be 10, and normally if it is up at that higher number, which is 10, you'll have more TAs in the classroom, but that is also dependent on the educational needs of the kids as well, and the behaviours of the kids too. Yeah. So as said, there's 2 types of registrations. One if you're a teacher, one if you're a TA. This is for if you are a teacher on the call today, or if you're listening from home at another time. Basically, each state in Australia has its own teaching registration process, but generally speaking, you'll need your transcripts and graduating certificates from your degree. If you did a arts degree and then a master's or a PGCE, you will need both transcripts and graduating certificates from them. You'll need your visa to start your applications for all of them. So that's why, and with Australia, most people go over on a working holiday visa. You have a year to enter the country once you get that. So you don't need to wait like until the last minute to do it. You can do it when you need. A few things like identification documents like passport, driver's license. Depending on where you go, there's a few additional forms or aspects to this part. For example, Sydney, you normally have to get a few documents verified before you do the application, which you do from your home country. Or if you're going to Melbourne, say you don't need to do any of that and you just upload it all before you arrive and register to teach there. I will say, dependent, we're not going to get too much into the whole where this during this call, because we're purely just focusing on what it's like to teach within SEN. But if you are considering going on a working holiday visa, I will just say that the 2 options realistically for you to get work, whether that's casual work or contract work, will be between Melbourne or Sydney, with Melbourne always being a better option because there's a lot more opportunities within Melbourne, but working in SEN as well is already amazing. You've got to have more options than someone who's just particularly working with mainstream. So really between the 2 cities pretty easily, but to keep it simple, Sydney, you can't apply to teach until you arrive. So that takes a couple of weeks, if not 2 months, to get registered. So you can't teach or work as a teacher during that time. Melbourne, you can apply to teach before you arrive and hit the ground running if that's what you want to do. So that's just a general overview, but you will get to talk about this with us and book in a call, which you will have the option to do after this call. So do not stress if you just heard that and be like, oh, you'll be fine. We'll sort you out.
So to work as a teaching assistant, you don't quite have to do as much paperwork as like a teacher would. So our teaching assisting work is going to be mostly based within Melbourne. So if you want to work as a TA in SEN schools, maybe do a little bit of work in primary or mainstream schools as well, Melbourne is the place to go. Within Sydney, we do have some kind of like before and after school options, but if you're really keen to work particularly as a TA in SEN, Melbourne is the place to go. It's a lovely city as well, lots of opportunities, so many different settings. So it's a great place to be based. To work as a TA then in Melbourne, you will need a working with children check. So to anybody in the UK and Ireland, it's like a DBS check or a Garda vetting. So it's just their version of that. That needs to be completed when you arrive in Melbourne. You will basically pop into a post office to complete the application. You show them your identity documents and then you're good to go. So it usually takes a couple of weeks to process. It costs about 128 Australian dollars. You'll need to show them things like your passport, your visa approval, things like that. You need to make sure that your visa that your visa matches the name on your passport exactly. So if you have a first, middle, and surname, you need to make sure that you list all 3 of those names to be able to make the application to the children check. And you do have to have this to be able to work as a TA, but it's not like a difficult process to get or anything, and it comes back super quickly. So you can be out to schools within a matter of a few weeks.
Yeah, that's great. Gives you some time to settle into your new city, you know?
Yeah.
Going through the benefits to working in SEN. They're endless. SEN is something that, regardless of whether that's all you want to teach or whether you are happy to do it while you're casually working amongst mainstream and special needs settings, you have already opened yourself up to so much more work opportunities. So working in SEN provides consistent work. So opportunity for 5 days of work a week, which I know is a really important thing to people moving abroad. The work confidence, I get it. You want to be able to afford your move, and that's what SEN provides, that consistency for nearly most parts of the year from term 1, 2, 3, and 4, with exceptions of like the first 3, like 2 to 3, 4 weeks, and the last 2 to 3, 4 weeks of the year being a bit quieter. But if you've already been working in the months leading up to that time, you're going to be probably booked into work, so you don't have to worry about that. That's just for people that are arriving at that time. Location within cities of Melbourne and Sydney, benefits, particularly more Melbourne, you can locate yourself anywhere. There's work everywhere across in special needs. If you're working within only mainstream primary or secondary, things like that, you're probably going to have to travel a bit more, or be open to maybe only some, depending, like I said, on time of the year, maybe 4 days of work a week. So that's why SEN is so great. You really get to have the luxury of picking the spot without the stress and having that consistent work. Professional development and growth, as said, the benefit of working within special needs is not just for consistency of work, but also if education is a career that you were saying, if you're always going to have a student that requires additional needs within your classroom. I know here in the UK and Ireland, you will already have in your classroom, if you're working within mainstream at the moment, students with additional needs. So this is not something that you will only have to work with if you only work in that setting. So, and as assessments and intervention gets better, the more we know students are within our classrooms as is. So I think it's a really important thing that everyone should do. I always think it should be mandatory for everyone to work with SEN for at least a couple of years, but my personal opinion. It's desirable as well, coming back to that experience from Australia, working within in these settings. You're going to come back and it's going to look amazing on your CV, and you'll be snatched up very quickly, I could promise you that. And there's sponsorship opportunities. So I know a lot of people moving abroad are like, but I want to stay longer. If you're Irish, you have to do the 88 days. If you're British, lucky you, you don't have to do the 88 days regional work. But either way, if you're looking to stay in Australia long term, more than just the working holiday visa, or you're not looking at even that, you just want to go long term from the get-go, sponsorship is much more of an option within special needs settings, because it's a harder place role, because not everyone has the experience and desire to work within it. So that's also something to keep at the back of your head if that's an avenue you're looking to go down. So like the work options, endless, as said. You can work casually, contract / block work, which is just like anything from 3 weeks to 6 months that you'll be doing. Then you have short-term contracts or permanent. That's for people that will be going over on skilled visas. You can take on long-term contracts of over a year or a year. And then long-term contracts will also be like sponsorship, things like that too. As said, get your consistent work. We're going every day. We also offer a thing called the Ambassador Program, which is a contract, and it's through us. And basically, to cut a long story short, if you sign this contract and you're working with us, you're guaranteed up to 5 days of work a week. And if we don't place you on the agreed amount of days of work, we will still pay you for that day. So great contract. I was on it myself for many years, can vouch by it. It's great to have that like guarantee and consistency, depending on where you live. And when you arrive, you can even be put on this from the get-go, before you can sign this contract before you get there to Australia. So for those that are looking for a bit of peace of mind, that's also a good one to bring up in the call, but that you will have with us. I'm all sure you will. As said, we've talked about the scope to move into longer contracts, things like that. If you start casually, you might be thinking, oh, I just want to do this, you know, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, but then you fall in love with it. There's a lot of room for that to extend within SEND settings. They will love you if you want to stay longer than a couple of days. I remember on one of my first jobs I came back like, oh, you came back? I'm like, of course I came back. What are you talking about? Because, you know, it's not for everybody, but there you go. Weekly pay. Who doesn't love weekly pay? I know I did. And your commute to work can be a little less as well, depending on where you live. It's all very dependent on where you live. For permanent opportunities, that, as said, is for only Aussies, Kiwis, people that have the skilled visa or are sponsored. Won't get too much into it, but you can have a look there, read at that. We will discuss this with you in your call to make sure that you are fully aware of what your working rights are and what you are able to do and the pathways that you can take to hopefully get to where you want. That's what you want as well.
Lovely. So this is some of how the process works then when you're chatting with us to ourselves on the global team, and then also the Australian team members as well. So you're going to have initial contact. So some of you might have spoken to us already, but if you haven't, you're going to speak to us first kind of about your plans, where you're thinking of going, when you're thinking of going. We'll make sure that, you know, you're applying for the visa that's going to be the best fit for you. If you need something a bit more in depth rather than a working holiday visa, we'll make sure to point you in the right direction. So we will run you through that. We'll chat you through the process of getting teaching registration or applying for the children check if you're a TA. So we'll make sure everything is really tailored to you, where you're going, and everything that you need. Once your working holiday visa is granted, you'll then also speak to a consultant that's based in Australia. So you'll have support on both the UK and the Australian side, so that any questions, we'll be able to support you with that. The team in Australia will help to support you with your arrival as well. On the UK side, all us global consultants support with the compliance, which includes like police checks, helping you get your police checks done, and doing your reference checks. So we run through kind of what we need in particular toward that when we speak to you individually, but we'll help you get that sorted on this side.
Oh, I'm skipping it.
And then once you arrive in Australia, you will meet with the team based there in person, and they'll finish off your registration with them. They will then be the ones to help clear you to work, make sure your paperwork is in order, and the team that's based there will then be the ones to call you to make sure that to get you out to work. So they'll let you know what is available for opportunities. You'll have access to our Ready to Work app, so you can see all of your calendar, your schedule and everything. It's really flexible that way, where you can, you know, pop in days that you want to take off, pop in days that you're available. So then we help to ensure that you are out to school and you're in the settings that you are enjoying, that you enjoy being placed in and working in.
Yeah, it's really good. And because you get to have that call with the Australian consultant before you arrive, the good thing about that is you can also be like, I'm going to arrive, but I want a week to settle, or I want 2 weeks to settle, or I'm doing East Coast road trip for a couple of weeks before I get. That's what you need to tell them, so that they can prepare you to then work at the dates that you're wanting to work. Because obviously you're going to have an idea of that once you've booked your flights, what you're kind of looking to do. They will also be able to tell you what that means, where it's best to live based on the amount of days of work you want as well, and things like that. So it's a really handheld experience. Like, you get the full 360 experience of speaking to both of us, but you're not really left by yourself at any point. I can't stress enough that if you need help, you just message your global consultant. There is no need to suffer in silence. I have so many educators that are like, oh, I didn't know I could message you. I'm like, what do you need? So we're always here to help. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. So to make sure that your move is as comfortable and enjoyable and not stressful as possible. These are the resources as well that we were speaking about earlier. So like special education needs toolkit, that's a fantastic one. It goes through some of the wording and terminology within special needs settings that you might not be familiar with. It's a bit different to what you use back home. It also shows the structure of classes, things like that, just stuff to really prepare you for your first few days, weeks within the classes. We also offer things like area guides, where's best to live, things like that. We have blogs coming out of everywhere, mate. We covered it all, whether it's coffee shops, with best speeches, curriculum, how to find friends, like everything is there. We have a lot of resources and they're all free to you. Literally just go onto our website and go into the blog section and write in a word. You will probably find the blog that covers it. So that, which I know is very helpful to a lot of the educators we help because they've told us, which we like. We also, as well as the blogs, we have PDFs. A lot of you will receive once you have booked in your flights and visas and you're absolutely going, you get a almost what I call like the holy Bible of moving to Australia. Tells you about visas, no, well, not visas anymore, you've already got that. Tells you about like your bank card, telephone numbers, tax file numbers, getting set up for all of that. You also can ask your consultants, you can ask us and we will run you through it. So you get a lot of guidance so that you're not doing it alone. I know a lot of people sometimes put off the call until like they have it all planned, but we are also here to help you with the planning. So as I said, don't suffer in silence. We also have a Facebook group, which is great. You get invited to join that. Once you have a call, you can ask anything in there, from whether someone wants to grab a coffee when you arrive to what to pack, things like that. It's just a social space for you to make friends, as well as get some questions answered that you might want to get answered from the general public of our teachers. What else? Oh, now I am back in Oz.
I know, you're like our model. It's great. So we do host a lot of events as well, and we have lots of communities. So on top of like the Facebook groups and everything, we try to host some like pre-departure events, and we also host lots of welcome events in Australia as well, across both Melbourne and Sydney. So you're more than welcome to join those to meet other traveling educators, maybe make some friends, maybe plan some of your parts of your trip together, potentially find a new housemate. So it's a great way to really make connections kind of pre and post arrival, and to know that you've got that community around you and you've always got friends that you can rely on and call up if you just need a slice of home as well. So
yeah, it's fantastic. We got the why with us as well. Firstly, we're one of the only people that do traveling, or not people, companies. I guess we're also big people at the end of the day. But we're one of the only companies that do the overseas journey this thoroughly and that have been doing it this long. As said, today might be the 20th anniversary for ANZ UK, and it was founded off traveling educators. CEO Dan, he literally was his one to go to the UK and teach, and that's how this all started. So we know how to support traveling educators. It is our blood and bones. It's what we know. As said, I'm not going to ramble on about all of it for too long, but we have it all. We have apps that make it easy to do, like the Ready to Work app. It's so that you're green or you're red, you're available or not. You're not going to get penalised if you take a week off to do your trip or to go to Bali or whatever you do. You're traveling. It's Australia. Get it. You're there to experience it, not just work as well. But if you want to just work, support that as well. We work with different sporting clubs and all sorts of affiliations once you're there. So if you want to meet friends, we know where to send you. But if not, you have the events, you can come along. It's free food and drink on us, and you will make a friend. That's almost guaranteed. And as I said, resources, everything. We have it. Everything you could possibly ever need, we have it. So why not? No one-stop shop, as they say. Yeah, the what to remember. You can go for it.
So just some key parts of kind of making the journey and everything. If you're going to be needing to complete regional work to extend your visa beyond a year, particularly if you're on an Irish passport or like a mainland European passport, like an EU passport, then you will need to complete regional work to stay more than a year. So think of a timeline of when you'd like to do that. We can also kind of run you through like the busiest points in the school year, so we can give you some tips around when you might want to complete that to kind of avoid the lulls in the school year, so you can take advantage of the busy periods. So we can run through that with you. You will need to ensure that your documents are prepared before you depart, so particularly for some states more than others, but we'll again run you through that, make sure you've got checklists and everything relevant to what you need to where you're going. Do some research on where you're going to live. You can use the info packs that we send you as well. There's going to be some links in there too around like websites to use when finding places to live. So definitely do some searching on that, so when you arrive, you kind of have a good idea of like where you want to be based, what you're looking for accommodation wise. And then keep an eye on our webinar and event page because we do have lots of webinars coming up, and our next one is going to be relocation tips and travel advice on June 19th. So we'll be running you through all the most important things to remember when you're getting on that big tin bird and making the journey down under.
Yes, that'll be a good one. It will. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for jumping on. If you have any questions that you feel weren't answered, shoot them through in the chat now. We're happy to answer it, whether that be anything from, I don't know, what's back, what to expect, anything, curriculum, good pubs. Otherwise, we will love you and leave you and let you enjoy your fabulous Wednesday afternoon. But thank you, guys, and one of you already have a call booked in with Annika, so she's well knowledge. She will be able to support you through and through to the end. That then, I guess we will love to leave you guys, let you enjoy your night, and we will talk soon. Hopefully, you will get an email from us that goes that will give the recording of this if you want to watch it back, and also send through the links to book in a call if you haven't already booked in a call. So that's all for now. I can see Shannon's typing, but I don't want to hang up before she's got her moment to ask a question. How the phone call that we do is normally it's a 30-minute initial call. Sorry, it's fine. It's a 30-minute initial call, so
Yeah.
it will. And if you need more time after that, we can always organise follow-up calls, things like that. So
Yeah.
it's short and sharp. So it will require your CV, so we have everything beforehand to get through what you need and ask everything. And then, but you'll yes have our email address. You know where to find us always.
Right.
All right.
Thanks so much. And yeah, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we're super excited to chat with you about your plans and get you off to Australia. So we're really looking forward to connecting with you.
Bye, guys.